Welcome to this lightning lesson on what to say when a VP hijacks your sprint. What we're going to be doing is talking about how to handle stakeholders that might be in an urgent place and a little pushy on how to take some of their ideas and turn them into something that you can work with without losing your credibility or relationship that you might have. Now, we're going to cover a very narrow, specific situation about something that's inbound and how do we respond without losing our influence. But then there's much more to it than just that one moment. There's the precursor moments of how you build that relationship with different stakeholders that might have this kind of influence on your product. And then there's also all of the follow-on things that can happen to make your product a success with bringing your stakeholders along with you. But I want to cover a specific situation that a student brought up to me one time. And it was on a Thursday afternoon for her. And she got a Slack message from a VP of sales. And it was about 13 minutes before her next meeting. So she was a little flustered with, well, how do I handle this? How do I handle it before I move into my next meeting, in which she was already in the mode of trying to prepare for? So she gets this message, and hopefully that little Slack sound didn't send you into your own anxiety panic attack. But she gets this message from the VP of sales that starts with, "Hey, product manager, we have three enterprise product prospects that are asking about ACH payments this week. Our competitors all have it. We're losing deals. Can we get this on a roadmap for Q2? I need a timeline I can bring to these accounts." And so this has been genericized so that it can be applicable, but she got something very similar. Somebody that's trying to sell to enterprise accounts in the fintech space is looking for an extra feature. In this case, it's called ACH payments. Basically, it's a low-cost method of transacting across two different parties. And so it's very common as far as that goes. And so it's likely that the competitors have it. But what is happening is she's already got a roadmap planned. She has Q2 already worked out and agreed upon, and everybody's aligned around it, her team and her leadership so far. But she doesn't want to disappoint the opportunity or miss out on the opportunity for new sales too. So she wants to play this right. Maybe there's extra information from this stakeholder that she doesn't know about, with the three prospects asking for it. But there's one critical thing in here. We're losing deals. Can we get this on the roadmap? So is there something that's high impact also in this idea? How do we handle this without getting flustered, throwing our current roadmap out the window, and then getting our team all frustrated by us? So if you've ever been in a situation like this, you probably have because you're here today to talk about it. But if you have, either raise your hand or put a one in the chat if this is a situation that you've ever run into something like this. Okay, so we've got some people that have, and others are just trying to learn about this so that they're prepared in the future. Okay, so we'll move forward. We've got three different ways that most product managers handle this. And all three ways are the classically trained ways that product managers are taught to handle these things, but they often fail as a result. And so we'll go through why that is, and then what one way is that can succeed here. So the most common saying in product management is you need to be able to say no. You need to say no so that you can say yes to the important things. And that's true. But when you push back on stakeholders to say something like, well, that's not on our roadmap, we're focused on other priorities. When you're saying no and pushing back on people with energy and ideas, you're actually burning political capital with these people. So usually your stakeholders have a higher level of authority than you do in the organization. Or these could be customers as well, considering stakeholders too. So you can be burning bridges along the way when you just say no to people's different ideas. And the VP in this case is likely not going to just go away because you've said no. They're probably going to go somewhere else. And that could be to your boss. It could be to your boss's boss in some way. It doesn't necessarily create a good relationship or rapport for long-term success in an organization because we have to work with other people. So this ends up creating enemies by pushing back in this manner. The second way that product managers are taught is to, well, interrogate. Make sure that you have a good, solid business case with all the answers. So we start asking questions. How many customers are there? What's the revenue? When do you need it by? we're asking them to basically fill out our form. Sometimes we will send them to the intake form because we're tired of actually talking to people about all this stuff, and we expect them to answer those questions before they're even allowed to be considered on the roadmap. So we want those questions answered, but it's how we ask them that makes a big difference. And so this VP feels like they're filling out a form, even if it's a conversation with you, and it starts to create frustration. They don't want to do this. Again, they might go the easiest route of just telling your boss to go and do it, or just telling you to go and do it. And so lastly, when we've gotten tired of pushing back, when we've gotten tired of the interrogation and the forms, we finally just give in. It's just because we don't know how to handle the first two methods very well. And so we say, fine, we'll look into it. We're going to check with engineering on the timing. We'll just give in. And it's the path of least resistance. We'll just build what the stakeholders want because that's what it seems like my job is supposed to be. But 3 months from now, we're creating features that people forgot about that never really needed in the first place. And we're creating waste along the way because we could have created something better. So what's the fourth option? Well, it's a little bit different than all three, but in a way combined with the first two. We still want to be able to push back. We still want to ask these questions, but we want to ask with sincere curiosity. We want to lean in and see if we can pull out that context in a different manner than the way we interrogate them. So it's about how you ask, not necessarily what you ask. You still want to get to the same amount of information, your context, so that you can make good decisions. Without context, we make terrible decisions. We just have to then rely on what other people say and just do what they say, right? So we as product managers are not supposed to be gathering requirements. I'd hate the term requirements in general, but we definitely don't gather them to write them down and then have somebody else ship them because we are becoming obsolete very quickly if that's our mode of working. What we do is we take in clues from people, whether that's clues from the market, our competitors, our customers, or in this case, clues from a stakeholder that has an idea. Well, where did this idea come from? We use that as a clue to then be a detective and do our own discovery and research from that. And we want to figure out then what is the problem area behind the request that's going to lead to our success and better ideas in the future. So how we approach it, the tact we use makes a significant difference. We're going to ask 6 different questions. This is the basis, but I want you to go beyond this when you actually have the conversations. But here's the 6 basic questions that we've got to ask. The top way of doing it is going to be the robotic manner, the question that we all have been taught to ask, but everybody now knows. The bottom manner of asking is really we're asking for a story from our stakeholder to give us more context, something they're more willing to divulge. So for example, the first question is, well, who needs this? Like, who's our persona? Who's the customer? What's the user in this case, the user segment? The more sincere way of leaning in with curiosity is to say, wow, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about it? Where did this idea come from? Can you give me the real name of a person that you were talking to about this so that I can picture them too? And maybe so that I can go and talk to them as well, because I'd love to dig in more about their situation. So what we're doing here is, yes, we want to challenge our stakeholder with saying, did this just come from your head or did it come from a real customer situation, right? A real market situation, competitor, whatever it might be. And so we want to try to get as specific as possible. I would also challenge you if you have something on your roadmap that you say, this is for this feature, or sorry, this persona, but you can't picture the name of an individual customer that you know needs this thing. I would challenge you to also go that far and interview somebody, talk to somebody you know actually needs what you're building before you build it. So you want to do the same thing with your stakeholders here. So move from the robotic to sincere. We'll do that for all 6 questions. So what's the problem? All right, what are you really trying to achieve? Don't ask that question. They all know our games by now. And so that question is going to tip somebody off and they're going to get frustrated. They're going to know that you're going through your script. You want to make this more conversational and act like you're curious. You might have to put on a facade. If you're not actually curious, you want to put on an act to seem like you are. So you can ask questions like, well, what's happening to them right now without this thing that you proposed here? What are they missing out on? So this digs into the problem area more so. It says, yeah, I'm going to acknowledge the solution that you have an idea could work, but I want to know what's happening. What are their current workarounds? And then how frequently is this happening? So how many times are they hitting this pain? Is this daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually? You need to know because you're going to be doing some math and you need to know this math equation in your head. So you got the problem area, the frequency, and then the next you're going to have, how painful, what's the amplitude of this pain? So when it happens, yikes, what do they have to do instead when this happens? This is where you get that workaround. What are the existing alternative solutions they're using? Are they paying for something already and then still having to do manual effort on that? How satisfied are they with that existing solution? This is where you're going to find that gap that you could potentially fill. And this is where your business case comes from. So what does it cost them to do this today or to not be able to do this today? And then we want to know the prevalence. So we got frequency, amplitude, prevalence here. So this is how many users. So if you talked to, in this case, three or one, how representative is this one user of other users? Is this a unique one? When we talk to salespeople, they're usually so laser focused on their market area, their segment, that they don't think about so many others because they're not paid to. They're focused on closing these ones that are right in front of them. So they may not have a good answer for this, or they may give you some bluster around like, oh, how many users? Oh, it's everybody. Everybody needs this thing. And so you can ask slightly different ways to dig into that. Oh, so is it just them or are others feeling this too? How many of them are there? Who else? Who else could I go and talk to about this? This goes back to that first question as well. So you want to get some names for real if you can. And then lastly, while we want to have all the benefit to go to our customers, we need to be thinking also selfishly about our own company's benefit. So if our customers could do this, what would it unlock for them? And then if we unlocked that gain for them, what could we gain from this as well? So we want to create this business case from these different questions. Now, as we get the answers in, we want to keep the conversation open. We don't want to just be fill out the form, we'll make a decision, and we'll let you know the conclusion on it. We want to keep the conversation open with the stakeholders to make them stay on the side of us with that idea, with that feature. But we want to start anchoring now on the problem area. So what we're going to do is reframe what they've given us, those answers to those questions that we have, and we want to anchor them on that problem. But we want to start to separate them from their idea for multiple reasons. First is when we get one idea in, usually there's multiple ways to solve a problem. So if we don't anchor on the problem, we miss out on those other good possible ideas that we can be brainstorming. Usually the first idea we come up with is not the best. Oftentimes it's the worst idea. We want to have layers and bring other people into the brainstorming. We can't do that unless we then convert this to the problem area so that we can say this problem now has potentially many solutions and they could be layered, including the one the stakeholder brought up. Maybe we do other things too, because its problem area is important enough for it. The second issue that we're trying to now reframe around the problem area because we want to disassociate the stakeholder from their idea. The pride of authorship can be a real problem when we go to put something on the roadmap. If we start to say, no, it's not this idea, it's something else, or we say no entirely, well, they're so stuck on that idea that they're going to fight back. So we want to disassociate them from the idea and move towards the problem so that it becomes, instead of me versus you and your idea, it's us versus the problem. We're both on the same side looking at it. So here's how we do it. First is what we're going to be doing is opening and closing to try to keep the relationship going. So we're going to open up and say, hey, can I summarize what I'm hearing to make sure I got it? This is a question that implies humility. I don't know everything. You have more information. I want you to educate me even more, but I want to tell you I'm listening. I hear you. And so that just opening question, they always say yes. And then you have an opportunity to say, I still want to hear more. Well, I'm not shutting this down. Then you take the answers to those questions that we had and you fill in this Mad Lib. So in this case, it's there are X number of people struggling with this specific problem because they're forced to do this current workaround. Today, they're experiencing this much pain, whatever that is quantified. And if they were able to then achieve this state, what they're really trying to accomplish, then they could have this kind of benefit for their user level, for their company level, which would then unlock this new opportunity for them and for us. Now, you can use these words specifically, but really it's you should be changing this around to make this sentence actually make sense. And I'll show you an example in just a moment. But you fill in with the answers to those 6 questions and then anything else you pulled in. But if you notice, nowhere in this are we talking about the solution. If we do mention the solution that they brought up, we're going to categorize it. So if they were to say ACH payments, I might categorize that into low cost payment methods or alternative payment methods so that I'm going to try to disassociate them from the idea, but I talk about the whole category. And that also implies the problem. Low cost is implying a benefit, which means that there's an implied problem, that costs are a problem to our customer. So what I'm doing by that is making sure that we're anchoring still on the problem. And then you close it with, did I get that right? Again, you're going to invite feedback in. We're not done with it just because we've asked some questions. So the 2 bookend questions keep the relationship intact, which is very important. And then the blanks in the middle are helping you focus on that problem area. So here's what that product manager sent back when she got that message. So she got the original one from the VP of sales, and then trigger warning again, the Slack sound is that here's what she sent back. Hey, VP sales, I want to make sure that I'm tracking with you on the ACH ask. So she's asked some questions in between this. Sounds like there are about 12 enterprise customers, people like Sarah at Widget Company's procurement team. So she got a specific name out of it, who are getting hit with 2.9% credit card fees on big invoices. So that's about $290 on a $10,000 invoice. If we were to give them ACH at 0.8%, we'd roughly save them about $100,000 to $150,000 a year, which probably makes us a lot harder to leave. Stickiness is there. So if we were to say it's about $1.2 million in ARR, we're protecting across all of our customer base and not just these new potential customers. That's the business case for this. Did I get that right? If so, there are even more things we could do to save them on these costs too. So we're actually saying there could be even more ideas. We're planting the seed that this is a great idea and there's maybe even more, assuming this problem does come out with this magnitude of impact. So I want to encourage that we're going to potentially do brainstorming so that they're prepared that if we might come up with a different idea than what they had as well. So we've anchored on the problem and given them some soft landing around, hey, there are other ideas too that might work too. And then lastly, you want to grab 15 minutes this afternoon to dig in more. Remember, we only had 13 minutes to do a couple quick questions to try to make sure I can hear them now. I can treat them like a person and not just an intake form. And then I want to continue the conversation and build that advocacy further so that when we do come up with a good idea, maybe even better idea with a bigger business case, this person is not only a good sounding board, they're going to potentially sell this to those customers, right? That's great. But they're also our advocates internally, supporting us, supporting our careers, supporting our product roadmap. So now we've gone to something that could be throwing our roadmap out entirely to now building an advocate and building our product more strategically too. Now, I didn't say whether this is going to fit into your roadmap today or not. We, in our full course and our workshop, we do go through multiple steps to help the stakeholder now realize whether this should be included in the near-term roadmap or maybe later. So I talked through some tactics in that, but in regards to this short lightning lesson, can't fit all of it in this time. So if you want to learn more, follow along and go to some of the other options we have available too. So let's think about your conversations that you've had recently. So take this back to something you've got in mind. I want you to picture one. So a stakeholder that may have given you a feature this week, an idea. Maybe somebody came into your office, if you have a physical office, and told you about something. This happened to me all the time when I reported as a VP of product to the CEO of a small company. The CEO would come into my office almost every day with new ideas of new shiny objects. And I failed a lot in this situation, which is where this experience and this advice comes from, was figuring out how to actually make this work with many different kinds of stakeholders, not just that one. So think about something you've brought in. Can you determine who the real customer is behind that request? If you're just taking it in and you can't name somebody on the other end of it, can you even get to a user persona category Not if you were to write a user story, it's not as a user, I want this blank, right? Or as this stakeholder, I want this feature so that I can sell it. You want to get down to an actual name of somebody that you've talked to that has this need that you're going to be building for. If you can't, you need to start there with your research as well, and dig in. Treat what you've been given as a clue to do some detective work. Next is we got to talk about that math part that's in the middle. Multiple questions are to gather inputs for a math formula. So we might have time spent on a current problem. That's part of the pain amplitude, the issue frequency, the user prevalence across the market, across your user base, across your non-user base that you could win over as new customers, the amount of dollars spent on these things, the number of customers, the retention rate, the conversion rate, whatever it is, you've got to build out some sort of impact statement that is mathematical. Also, the more specific you can get with this, the better. If I give a specific number back to that stakeholder and say, did I get this right? They're going to correct me on it. But if I give a general statement of like, oh, it helps us with sales, they're going to be like, yeah, that's true. But if I said, hey, if I gave you this feature, it sounds like you could win 3 new deals this quarter. And everybody be like, whoa, 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 that's a little bit much because they don't want to be on the hook for something like that. So the more specific we can be with what we put into our impact statement, the better feedback we can get and the better research and the better way we can prioritize. And then lastly, how would you reframe the idea around the problem space? Take that Mad Lib, I'll send you the slides for this, and you're going to twist that around to where, well, we're talking about the problem, but it doesn't sound like you're being clinical in how you're changing it around. You're making it conversational and just summarizing around the problem space. So think about some of those ideas that you've got, and then I'll ask you for some of them at the end. When I'm not around, though, I'm going to give you a bit of a cheat code. So I've got an AI, very long AI skill or prompt. I've got two different methods of doing it. You can go to this QR code, or I'll share with you this specific link in a second in the chat too. And you can pull up an actual AI coach that has all of this information and a lot more built into it and drop in, here's the request that I got from a stakeholder. Here's what I'm thinking about sending back. Coach me on these things from the stakeholder's perspective and Brendan's perspective. So if we were to shift this over to Chrome real quick, I'll share with you. So this is the prompt right here, the stakeholder request reframe prompt. I'll give you the exact URL. You can go to this and just copy the entire thing down. So copy that right there. And you're going to paste that in. And that'll give you everything you need. If you want a full skill, there's a skill file. There's a whole bunch of skill files in here too. Actually, if you go to the repository, there's many different categories. So business building, career growth, coaching, influence, strategic thinking. So if you go under strategic thinking, you're going to see a bunch of different skills too within that. So you got this one, stakeholder request, reframe skill. So you could download those, put into Claude if you want, or just copy the prompt. And then you could use this to coach yourself up when I am not around. All right, let me go back to the Zoom window and share the PowerPoint again. And I will paste in the chat here the URL to that GitHub as well. Okay, so coach yourself up on it. We're nearing the end here. So I wanted to mention you've got one technique, just one simple thing that hopefully was very practical for you, gave you some more perspective. So this was leaning in with sincere curiosity plus the reframe aspect of it. So you got these questions answered and you want to stay conversational. Now, if you want to know a lot more and practice this, we have a workshop coming up on Thursday. It's 3 hours. We keep it small groups, only 15 seats available in all of my courses so that I can keep interactions going. And what we do is we'll build up some of the strategy elements with your product metrics ladder ahead of time so that you can then justify to stakeholders why this feature is here and talk to you about how you can then phrase that back to them better. We'll practice the reframe more with live coaching to help you sound more natural with it, because the first time you do it, you sound like a robot still. I guarantee it. And then we'll talk about how you can then build your career with these stakeholders to help them help you succeed going forward. That also gets you a $200 credit towards the full course. So it's pretty much risk-free option here. And the full course of the Influential PM is 8 live sessions, about 20 hours of content. And we cover everything from stakeholder influence to product strategy and being able to present well and communicate well. So by coming to this lightning lesson, you get $300 off with this code LL300. And I will paste the URL to that in a moment as well. You can find all the courses that I have available, as well as other lightning lessons right here. And then I will move it to questions. So now it's an open mic time. If you have a question, now is the time to ask. Or if you have a stakeholder situation that's been very tricky for you, open it up and we'll discuss it too. All right. Well, if you don't have any other questions, wanted to wrap this up right on time. We're right at that 10:30 Central mark for me. So I appreciate you joining. And if you do have questions, you can reach out at brennan@unabatedproducts.com. I'd be happy to chat with you more too. All right. Great seeing everybody. See you again soon.